Hello, ladies and gentlemen, Gamestay here. This is the Brawlers Guild guide for the final fight in Rank 9 against Ahoo'ru, who is, I don't even know what exactly, a crazy paladin of some sort. So this fight is moderate in difficulty. I personally think Nibbly, the snake, is way, way worse, at least as a melee, but, you know, use your own discretion, I suppose. So this fight is interesting. There are a number of mechanics to think about, and how well you do will depend greatly on your strategy and ability during the first phase, essentially. Most of the fight is decided during this first half of the fight. So let's get started. So when you start the encounter, Ahoo'ru will spawn slightly off center and walk toward the middle of the arena, at which point he becomes immune to damage for the first half of the fight. However, while he's walking to the middle, he will not have his shield up yet, so you can attack him and do some damage. Now this is not much time, so the best thing to do, I found, is to apply any sort of personal buffs that require attacking someone that your class or spec might have. This is just a couple seconds that you have to maybe get a personal buff up or two in preparation for the avenging angels that you'll be attacking for most of this phase. So once the boss goes immune, he will spawn a ton of these little sparks that will float around the room. Now, the majority of these sort of float in sort of random pattern. However, there are a series of them that form a circle around the boss that will go from the central location of the boss and extend outward until they hit the edges of the arena, and then they'll be pulled back in, always staying within that circle formation. So you'll see a couple times during this phase that when that circle gets close to the boss, like right now, it's creating a pretty tight ring of those. And obviously, this means that it's a lot more difficult to dodge these. Now, throughout this phase, if you touch one of these sparks, these normal sparks, it will do 200,000 damage to you. So you have to be very careful to avoid most, if not all of these throughout the phase. However, throughout the phase as well, the boss will sort of empower a random spark every couple seconds that will show up as a much brighter light. And instead of doing damage to you when you touch it within melee range, it will be converted into an avenging angel ad. Now these angels do very minor melee damage to you. So once one of them spawns, they're pretty much ignorable in terms of damage taken. And they move very slowly. However, the basic goal here is to kill an angel down to 50% health, at which point it will start to cast its charge ability. There you can see one of them casting there. Now charge is a 4-second cast, and at the end of the cast, it will charge toward your current location, wherever you happen to be standing at the end of the cast of charge. Once it charges to you, if that charge completed near the boss, it will drop a stack of his immunity shield. And this shield has 3 stacks in total. So this means that to get through this phase, you must force 3 angels to charge on top of the boss, at which point all 3 stacks of his immunity will be gone, and he will phase into the next part of the fight. Now when charge completes, if you're still standing in the effect of the charge, it will hit you for about 1.7 to 1.8 million damage. So unless you have an immunity or a 90% damage reduction, that's probably going to one-shot you, most likely. So you need to let them complete their cast of charge while you're near the boss, so that they cast toward the boss, but then move away so that the charge damage does not actually hit you, but only the boss itself. Now tactically, there are 2 main methods you can use to deal with these angels. The first is to essentially gather 3 angels at the same time, and then to use area of effect attacks to DPS them all down at the same time and equally. The goal here being to get all angels to 50% within the same 1 or 2 second time frame. If you're able to do this, then all 3 angels will be charging you at the same time, and you can stand near the boss or just behind him, and they'll all charge and hit him at the same time pretty much. So in theory, this may be able to get his shield off faster than by doing a single target method. The problem with this method, when I was trying it, and I tried it quite a few times, is that not only is it difficult to actually DPS the angels down evenly, and of course if you're off by even a couple seconds, they'll charge at different times and you won't be able to stay near the boss. But it's also difficult to get the angels together. And this is very random based on the spawn locations of the angel sparks. So if you have one in different corners of each other, or a couple of them in opposite corners, because the angels move so slowly, it's going to be very difficult to get them close enough together to AE them. And this is just wasted time that you could be doing damage that you're really not. So it will depend a lot on your class and your spec, of course, whether this is a useful method. But at least for me as a monk, I found it was kind of a waste of time to do this method. And instead it was better to just focus on killing them one at a time as fast as possible. So that is the second tactic. So this is the method you see in the video here. And this is pretty self-explanatory. The basic idea is as soon as the sparks spawn, you want to position yourself somewhat near the center of the room and watch very closely. I do this by zooming my camera out and kind of looking down upon the arena to see where that first spark is cast. The boss himself actually shoots the angel spark out to wherever it's going, so you can see the animation. If you watch closely here, he will shoot a spark out from his location. There it is. So then you can quickly move to that position, stand near the spark, and spawn the angel. Now, doing a single target method, the best thing you can do to help yourself is to spawn an angel while another one is charging. So right there a moment ago I was able to do that. And this just happens to be whether they're close enough or not. But the basic idea is that you want to take advantage of any extra time you can to help yourself. So while one angel is spawning, I quickly sidestepped, or while he's charging, sorry, I quickly sidestepped to touch another angel spark to get that one to a spawn, and then it would start moving toward me. So it would save me a second or two that otherwise I would lose. And those are just basic little things that you can practice. So if you're a melee and you have sparks near enough to you, do that. Just make sure the charge ends when you're near the boss. And otherwise, if you're ranged, especially if you have a lot of dots, you can do this on purpose quite easily. So you can spawn one, and then while you're dotting it up, you can move toward another spark to spawn another angel, so that their charges are staggered, but you're always doing damage to more than one angel pretty much. And this will save you time overall that you'll be able to use in the second phase where you need to really burst out your DPS. So once you remove the third stack of Ahooru's shield, the second phase will begin. And this phase is by far the easier of the two. It's pretty much just a DPS requirement with a little bit of survival and interrupt thrown in there. But it's important to note that in order to kill the boss, you need to have enough time left in this phase to actually do enough DPS, since he has 10 million health, which is a fair number considering how much time you have to spend in the first part of the fight. So the best goal I could find is to try to aim to have at least a minute left on the Berserk going into this phase. And again, this will vary greatly depending on your class and your spec and your eye level and all that. For me, I was eye level 518 for this fight. And you'll see, I think I had about a minute 7 or something left when this phase began. So that was by far the most time I've had when I'm making my attempts. It's about 6 or 7 seconds faster than my best prior to that. So that just really comes down to how efficiently you handle the first phase. But again, the goal should be, I think, around a minute for this final phase. And then as long as you have suitable gear to do the fights leading up to this, you should be able to kill him eventually during that period. So mechanically, this second phase really has 2 abilities to worry about. The first is Divine Circle, which he casts right there. And he will create a circle of orbs around your location that will slowly enclose. When you touch one of these orbs, it applies an 8-second debuff or dot that does 30,000 damage per second for 8 seconds. And this can stack. So if you touch 2 orbs, you'll take 60,000 damage per second. The basic way to think about it is each orb you touch does about 240,000 damage to you in total. So you need to find a way to mitigate or heal through that in some way. So a minor tip for any monks that are doing this, you can use Touch of Karma and basically purposely absorb 2 of the orbs with Touch of Karma reflecting all that damage to him. However, future orbs, you'll have to heal or mitigate the damage, so you only want to touch 1 of them at most times. And if you have a form of teleport and you can afford the DPS loss, you can of course teleport out of it or something like that as well, but I didn't worry about that because I needed to kill him fast. He also does melee damage, which is fairly minor, but again, you need to mitigate or heal through it in some way. And then the final main ability is Complete Heal. Now, I've had reports of others that say that he complete heals much more frequently for them than he did for me, and I tried him a number of times. So even in this last phase, he never seemed to complete heal before about 50% health, and then he would just do it in a regular interval. So I don't know what the exact timing is on it, but the important thing to note is that for complete heal, you need to stop the cast in some way. So you can interrupt him or you can stun him. I'm sure disorients, maybe even knockbacks probably work too. I didn't try those, of course, but the basic goal here is, of course, if you don't interrupt his complete heal, it does as it's advertised and completely heals him. And one of those is going to ruin this fight for you, pretty much. So just have some way planned ahead of time that when he does that ability, you will be able to interrupt or stun him and prevent the cast from going off. And as you'll see here, I got 2 of those casts, and attempts prior I also had 2 just prior to the Berserk. So, I don't know, plan for 2 or 3, and then you should be okay from that perspective. And that's really all there is to it. So, yeah, it's mostly about being efficient in the first phase, handling the angels as effectively as possible so that you have enough time in the second phase to DPS them down that 10 million that you need to do. So, again, I would say around a 5-10 or higher eye level, depending on your class and whatnot, should be at the bare minimum, what you need to get by for this boss. And if you have more burst cooldowns or DPS cooldowns, then you can probably go a little lower. And if you have lower DPS, of course, you need a higher eye level. So that covers it, I think. That is Ahoo'ru, and once you get him down, you'll be the rank 10 champion. Get your mount and all that good stuff. So, as always, good luck. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this, please subscribe.